as opposed to the AirPods, let me know.
Okay, got it. No, actually, I got you. I can go ahead and I can adjust your volume in post, so I'll be good there.
Okay.
Not a
Awesome.
problem. Not a problem at
Awesome.
all. All right, cool. So let me go ahead and jump in. And what I'm going to do is I got your intro and all that stuff. So what I am going to do is I'm just going to jump in here. With joining me is Dr. Sheena Howard,
Perfect.
um, the awesome Dr. Sheena Howard, and then we'll go ahead and get you going. Okay.
Yeah, sounds good. Let's go.
All right, cool. All right, here we go. In 3, 2. Thank you for joining me on this episode of For Our Edification. I'm Eddie Francis. And so I have to tell you, first of all, I am not in my normal habitat right now. Usually I am at home doing this thing, but I'm on the lovely campus of Xavier University of Louisiana. All kinds of stuff happening today. So you're going to hear some foot traffic and some voices in the background. Don't worry. They're Xavier rights. They're harmless. So I am pleased to be joined by Dr. Sheena Howard. Got to tell you about this. Last year, I had the opportunity to join an organization, a speaker bureau called Greek University. A group of people got up, told their stories. One of the people who stood out immediately was Sheena Howard, because it's the story that you have, Sheena, and then also it is the dogged determination that you have to really, really get stuff done, if nothing else. And I really have a thing about personal leadership, and I thought about you, and I'm like, yeah, I think this sister's going to be able to give us some good stuff. So how you doing?
I'm great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. It means a lot.
I'm humbled because because when I learned about where you had done a lot of interviews, of course I've seen Breakfast Club, and I was just like, good. I feel legit now. So first of all, let me just start with this. Because you have so many cool things that you do. Talk about what it is that you do and why it's important to you, because the work that you do is very important to you. So tell us about it.
Yeah, so two things really. So I have a company called NerdWorks, which is really just my personal brand, but it's a image activism and diverse storytelling company where I write for celebrities, CEOs, and I used to say social impact companies, but really it's just organizations that can reach a big population across the world.
Yeah.
So under NerdWorks, I've written for the New York State Department of Health. I've written for DMC from Run DMC. I've written for huge, international nonprofits. And then I also have an academic branding company called Power Your Research, which teaches people with PhDs how to build big brands and monetize and leave a legacy, all that good stuff.
I'm,
So
I'm laughing because I used to do higher ed marcom, so I can only imagine how interesting that work is.
yeah, and as the years go on, just PhDs have a lot of limiting self beliefs, a lot of roadblocks and mindset, and just a lot of
Mhm.
really things that are actually, I don't know. They just have a lot of work to do. So those are the two primary things I do. So of course under NerdWorks there's just kind of a lot of different monetization avenues and
Mhm.
but yeah,
And you're a professor.
correct. Yes. That's the day job.
Yeah, exactly. Why is it that what you do is so important to you? Because when people take a look at your social media, they can tell that what you do is extremely important. So why is it so important to you?
Yeah, so just empowering underestimated populations is important. When people see my content, I want them to see the content on the day that they are second guessing themselves or feeling like giving up
Mm,
or feeling not showing up or feeling like they don't feel like showing up to this podcast that they feel like nobody is listening to. And so if I can motivate somebody to keep going on the day that they want to give up, I feel like I'm doing all of us a
mhm.
service to the world because I feel like a lot of people are unhappy because they are not pursuing the dreams and goals that they actually want to be pursuing. And so I'm
Yeah,
here to say that you can continue to pursue your goals and you should. And here's
yeah,
why. Yeah.
yeah. And, I have to tell, I have been personally touched by a lot of your content because there are so many times when, after leaving my last 9 to 5 over a year ago, and I've been out doing business, I'm on my own for the first time, starting a company, the whole deal, it has been terrifying. And there
Yep.
have been times I'll be going through Instagram and then I'll see that Sheena Howard post and I'm sitting there going, huh, okay. Okay, all right,
Yes.
okay. Let me make this next phone call, and
Exactly.
yeah, it's
Good. That
about
means I'm doing my job.
you are really really doing it. It makes a big difference. Now, the reason that I have been so impressed by you though is because when I got a chance to meet you in the summer of 23, and we met with Greek University, and everybody was telling their stories. You told your stories, and one of the things that you talked about was having endured domestic abuse, and I
Mhm.
was just like, "Oh, okay, okay." She is coming back from a lot, doing a lot, and you talked about it in a TED talk that you did in
Yes.
2021. How did you make it through that?
Yeah, so in that TED Talk, it's called Three Truths of Self-Empowerment That Will
Yeah.
Set You Free. And those three truths are really how I made it out of it, and then everything that comes with leaving an
Mm,
abuser. And some people, a lot of people have interactions with toxic people,
yep.
right? Whether it's actually being in a relationship with them or just being with a toxic coworker. And
Hmm.
you just know how draining that is, right? So I think just
I've reported to several. Yes.
right. And it's like, how it messes with your mind mentally. And
Hmm.
so I think these three truths of self-empowerment are what I learned through coming through the situation. And I do think they're relatable to a lot of people. So it was just really me understanding that this is not the end of my story. I had to remind
Hmm.
myself of that every day. Sometimes when
Hmm.
we're going through things, we just have this cloud over us, and it seems like that cloud will never leave. But if you
Yep.
can just wake up every day if you're going through something tough and be like, this is not the end of the story, right? That was super helpful and instructive to me. Taking my power back by defining my own story. A lot of people have a lot of opinions and they say a lot of negative things to you in your lifetime.
Hmm.
And sometimes these things are impactful. Even negative things that strangers might say to you that catch you off guard can be something that lingers. And just, the other truth of self-empowerment is defining your own story. Nobody gets to define your stories. And so in the TED Talk, I give an example of being on a date with this guy. I don't even know this dude, and we're just doing the kind of, hey, where you're from questions. And I mentioned that my mother raised me, my brother, and he looks at me and says, I don't date people from single parent households.
Ah, okay.
And it caught me off guard because I was like 23 around that time.
Oh yeah.
And I never thought about the fact that I was from a single parent household. Like it never was a
Yeah.
thing. It was just like I had a loving parent, a great childhood. I don't have a single parent story of lights being off, or right. I was raised in a house, right? My childhood was great. And so the reason why that comment impacted me so much is because it was something different than what like nobody ever had pointed out to me that this should be a problem at all. So
Yeah.
when you have something that makes you stop and think like, what? Like I never that really sent me down a negative path because
Yeah.
it made me think about, oh, is there something wrong with me?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then I started to pay attention to all of the messaging around the way people talk about some people talk about single parent households. So this is why defining your own story is so important. Because
Mm.
one stranger's comment should have never made me question everything, right? It just should, right? But it was so foreign that it stood out, so it did. And I think that just comes down to boundaries,
Yeah.
right? Self-esteem boundaries, just boundaries, period. Even when you're in these social media streets, you
Hmm.
can't let the things people say impact you, right? People have different lives, different stories, period. And then the other thing is being the hero of your own story,
Hmm.
which this just means we're all going to go through things, and we have to be the hero of whatever the things are that we go through. Because the other choice is just to be the villain,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? And so how do you want to deal with the adversity? Do you want to be the villain? or do you want to be the hero? I think being the hero and empowering yourself to be the hero is the better option.
So that's an interesting point. How do you know the difference, though, between being the hero of your own story and believing your own hype?
Oh, well, I think you get to believe your hype when you have evidence that you are who you say you are.
Yeah.
So nobody can tell me that I'm not a good writer
Right.
because I've written at the highest levels.
Hmm.
I think you have to outwork your self doubt and have evidence that you are who you say you are, and you do that by just showing up every day and doing the work.
Okay. Okay. That makes sense because look, being from New Orleans, I always have this joke that in New Orleans, we are the heroes of our own stories. But a lot of times it's hype. It is like straight hype with some folks. Like there are folks,
Yeah.
I've had people tell me, like, Eddie, you walk in a room, you need to let them know you own the room. And I'm just like, okay, well, okay, that's cool. I don't have a problem with that. What does that mean? And what it means a lot of times is people are just like, you need to walk in and you need to tell people. And they really
Mm,
mean that I need to walk in and tell people something that's going to make them know that I own the room. And I'm going, but if
yeah.
I own the room, I shouldn't have to, I'm not going to have to tell anybody.
Mm,
That's going to
mm,
come from me. Like,
mm,
I'm,
mm.
so to me, that's the hero of my own story.
Mm-hmm.
But then to me, you believe in your own hype when you have to actually tell people you're the hero. You know,
Mm.
and that's why I always wonder about that. I'm like, what is that fine line for folks,
Yeah.
man?
I think if you're grounded, you can be grounded in confidence without being grounded in ego.
Yes, yes.
Ego is not even going to allow you to collaborate with people in a healthy way.
Right,
Um
right.
and so I think it is just not allowing ego to take over.
Yeah.
Because while I know I'm a good here's the difference. While I know I'm a good writer and storyteller, I know that
Mhm.
there's so much for me to learn. So nobody can tell me I'm not a
Mm,
good writer or
mhm.
storyteller, but I also know, oh my goodness, I still have to study storytelling. I still got so much to learn. I still have so far to go in
Mhm.
growing as a writer. So I think you need those two things.
Yeah. It's like one of my favorite Erykah Badu lyrics. The man who knows something knows he knows nothing at all.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like it's just, I used to make content for writers
Mhm.
specifically, and my page wasn't growing. And I realized it's because unfortunately writers think they know everything. Like if they published a book, they think they know everything they need to know, even though they only sold like 100 books, right? And so I had to open up my content not to just them because I realized like they're not like I still take writing classes. I still
Mhm.
take right even right. And a lot of writers they're not still investing in the education of it. And
Mm.
so for me, there's no ego here.
Yeah.
Or I try I don't let ego get in the way of things.
Yeah. 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 You're listening to For Our Edification. I'm Eddie Francis. We're talking to Dr. Sheena Howard. And Sheena is somebody who I got to know through Greek University. She's a professor. She is also a culture critic, which is, I love that part of the work that you do. And the fact that you deal so much with representation in writing, in comic books, all of that good stuff. So with all of the things that you do, all of the creative work, because your creative output is just ridiculous. And so with all the creative work that you do, how do you keep yourself going?
I think that I don't overwork myself.
That's interesting
So
because it looks like you do. I think if people
that's
look
because
at it,
people think social media is reality.
yep, yep.
And so I listen to these podcasts of these really successful people who talk about 12-hour work days. And I just listened to a podcast with Simon Cowell, who he was saying like he would just work into the middle of the night and wake up and work. And one of the things that these type of people always say, if you notice when they get older, they'll say, I wish I didn't work so much. Like I was a workaholic.
Yep, yep,
And
yep.
people ask me all the time how I get so much done. It's because I get 8 hours of sleep and I don't work. I try as hard as possible not to work after 5 p.m. I first of all, my
Mm,
brain shuts off after five.
yeah.
I can't do anything serious after 5 p.m. I have a child. I want to spend that time with him. Um, so if I work for 6 hours, it's 6 hours like in the flow state. I don't need to work for 12 because the 6 hours I'm committed and focused and probably getting as much done of quality as you would get in 12 hours.
Right.
And this is something that I've always been good at. If I got 3 hours of time, it's focused, dedicated, quality time, uninterrupted. And that's the difference. It's just
Mm.
that people on social media don't get the benefit of me sharing a lot of my personal life.
Yeah.
The tea time that I do, the playing board games with my son, because that's just not a part of my content.
Yeah. 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 You mentioned the flow state. Talk about the flow state.
Yeah, it's just when you're really in it and you lose track of time, and you're in a flow state, you might not even stop to eat. You got to remind yourself to eat. So I'm in the flow state most days because I also have dedicated time that I can work because I'm a parent.
Yeah.
And so my brain just shuts off after 5 p.m.
Mhm.
And so getting into the flow state during the day is important. I know the times of the day that I am the most creative and can get the most output. If you don't know your times a day, you're pushing a boulder up a mountain.
Yeah.
Like my time to be most creative is 10 a.m. to 2:30 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
If I try to write something at midnight, it's not going to work. I'm going to feel like I have creator's block and writer's block and all of those things that I don't ascribe to because I don't get those things because I have a creator user's manual that has all this stuff written down. So I'm not
Mm-hmm.
doing things that are preventing me from getting into that state of complete concentration.
And you remind me of, I saw a keynote address from a guy named Andrew Davis, marketing professional, and one of the things that he talked about was don't work so hard to think outside the box. Figure out how you can think inside the box.
Mm.
So how do you maximize what you already have, the resources that you already have? With you, one of the things I picked up from you is that time is an extraordinarily precious resource.
Yeah, don't waste my
And
time.
yeah, and
Also, I
and
don't waste time, Eddie. Like, I
yeah,
don't waste time, and I don't like people wasting my time.
right, right,
And
right.
also some of the thing, if people can lean into the things that are natural to them that would be sacrifices to other people,
Mhm,
they would get really further ahead quicker. There are
mhm,
some things that are natural to you that I might think is a sacrifice. And so if you can lean into that thing and use that
mhm,
as leverage, then you can get really really far ahead. I can give you a couple of examples if you want, but like I think that's really important.
mhm, mhm. No, well, so I was gonna bring up, like, one of your Instagram posts, you talked about how much just a one-hour walk does for you, and I'm just like, "Huh, she's working within her time,
Mhm.
and it makes her productive." I mean, is that one of your examples?
For sure. Because I can write a whole book in my head on a 1 hour walk. So when I come back from the walk, all I'm doing is writing. I'm not thinking about what to write.
Mhm.
And I need to walk alone. Me going on walks with like somebody else is annoying to me because I want to be alone thinking. Like
Yeah.
that's not fun because now I got to talk. If I'm walking with somebody else, I got to talk to them.
Mhm. Yeah.
So that's just me, but I know all of these things about me. So I do a lot of walking, miles every day. I'm walking miles every day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because when I get to the computer, it all comes out.
Yep, yep. That's why whenever I'm on a flight, and I really try not to be a jerk about it, but I can't stand it when the person next to me talks to me on a flight because
Mm-hmm.
that is prime creative time for me when I'm
Mm-hmm.
on a plane.
Yes.
And I come up with some of my best ideas when I'm just scratching stuff out and I'm just taking notes, or even if I'm watching a movie or listen to a podcast episode, I'm just like, ooh, and then some will pop up, and then I'll get my phone and just start getting notes in there or something like that. And so yeah,
That's a good example.
I can
That's a good
associate that.
example of something you should leverage. Me
Hmm.
getting on a plane is a sacrifice for me. I hate it. I will avoid flying at all costs.
Hmm.
But if that's something that works for you, all right, so maximize flying
Hmm.
and then maximize putting those headphones in so you can get the work done,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That's something that would be a sacrifice to me, but that is an area of strength that you can leverage for you.
And I really appreciate the fact that the way you frame it is what works for you is a sacrifice of somebody else. I think too many times, going back to social media, we will look at a social media post or we will look at some documentary and then we'll say, okay, that's what I got to do. Not realizing that, well, that's what works for that person.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I feel like we try to replicate these other people's success plans and morning routines, and like you got to create your own.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
Yeah, like the people like, if you're not up by 4:30, you are a failure. And it's just like,
right.
well, there are people who don't wake up at 4:30 no matter what you do.
Exactly.
They are not,
Exactly.
my wife being one of them. Okay, that sister is not waking up at 4:30 to do anything.
Exactly. So you got to lean into your strengths.
Yeah, yeah. Um Speaking of strengths, when you think about all the things that you do, what do you think really drives you? What drives your creativity, your intellectual capital, your passion? What drives all of that?
Oh, I want to be successful.
That's
Period.
it. You know what you want, and that's it.
Um I know that I haven't reached my full potential,
Yeah,
and because of that, I need to reach my full potential.
yeah,
I
yeah.
don't want to not reach my full potential, and I know I'm nowhere near that, and so that keeps me going every day.
hmm But then at the same time, again, this is one of those things where you really have to kind of separate one thing from the other because your version of success isn't somebody else's version of success.
Exactly.
And some people may not want necessarily success. They just say, hey, you know what? I just want to be with my family and I just want
Exactly.
that to be fun.
Yep.
And that's it. And if I can
Yep.
achieve that, I've achieved everything.
Exactly. Very important to create your own metrics of success.
You know, when you work with folks, especially when you work with PhDs, are these the kinds of conversations you find yourself having with them sometimes when you say, hey, listen, whoa, 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 you have your thing. Let's work within your thing. Do you find that happening?
Um, the biggest part is mindset stuff for the people with PhDs.
Yeah,
They don't feel like they have value outside of higher ed.
which is
They're scared
crazy.
to ask for money. They're scared to charge what they're worth for speaking engagements. There's just a lot of fear because that's how the educational system trains you.
Yep.
And the longer you are in the educational system, the more you have to unlearn things
hmm
if you want to go on this journey of doing things outside of higher ed. And I don't say that as someone that doesn't believe in education because obviously I have a PhD. I absolutely believe in education, but I also believe in you doing the other education
Yeah.
of unlearning some of the things that the system is going to teach you because I don't think they're helpful to you in terms of being a full human being.
Which is so ironic to me because, I mean, what, less than 2% of the population has PhDs.
Hmm.
And so you're talking about people with some of the most valuable intellectual resources and stuff that our society needs desperately. And yet they're sitting there going, well, can I really do that? And you're going, could you
Exactly.
please do it? you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, and then this is getting a little more frustrating to me over time. I'm not gonna lie. I've been running my Power Your Research company for 4 years now,
hmm
and I am feeling a little fatigue around just constantly. Every client that I work with is different, so they're all
Yeah.
pretty much starting at the same point as the client I worked with before.
hmm
But the levels of fear that they have are so significant.
Yeah.
And it bothers me because this is urgent. Like we are in a
Yeah.
time right now where if you start your brand, you could really make it out here. You
Yeah.
can make more money than any university can ever pay you. The barriers of entry are so low. It's so much easier right now. And it's just frustrating for me that I keep dealing with these PhDs with these mindsets that are in the toilet because of higher ed. Like I'm telling you, like I'm just like it's very frustrating, yo.
No, trust me. My wife has a PhD, so we have these conversations, and I'm like, you can do whatever you want. You really can.
Exactly. But
You really.
they will come up with a bunch of reasons why they can't.
Yep. I have heard it. I have definitely heard it. So, last question. This is something that I love to ask folks. And so, let's say that you are a skywriter, okay,
A
and you get
skywriter, okay.
a skywriter, yeah, and you get to write a message in the sky for the edification of the nation. Whatever message you want, what would Dr. Sheena Howard's message be?
Be kind.
You're the second person who said that. That's pretty cool. I
Mm-hmm.
love the consistency among the folks I'm having on the podcast right now. That makes me feel special. That is awesome. And isn't it so appropriate for where we are right now? Like,
Yeah.
just just be nice to somebody. Act like you were raised right. Just be kind.
Yeah. And like, I even think just being kind is, we don't all have the same definition of that.
True. True.
Or we're purposely not having the same. People are in such a dark place sometimes that they purposely create a different definition for something that is common sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Dr. Sheena Howard, speaker, writer, author, culture critic, professor, all of that good stuff. Thank you so much for joining me on For Our Edification. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, cool. Let me go ahead and stop this.